All right, so this is the February 20th E-Club of Southeast USA and Caribbean Zoom meeting, general member meeting. I'm Alicia Bostorff-Miller. I'm the president-elect, and I will be going ahead and running the meeting this evening. We are very fortunate to have as our February speaker, Corey Yeung, who got back fairly recently from a year-long trip to Taiwan through RYE. Before we have him speak, I'm going to turn the floor over quickly to David Montford and have him give us a little background on the program. Go ahead, David.
Great, I appreciate it. As everybody knows, I'm David Mountford. I'm actually the chairman of RYE Florida, which incorporates a few different districts within Florida and also Atlanta, Georgia. And also on the NIAN board as well, which is the North American Youth Exchange Network. But Rotary Youth Exchange is near and dear to my heart, obviously. Is some of the key things it does. Does anybody know where it started? Any ideas? Started in France before the US was involved in it. And we followed the following year, actually. But what it does is it builds peace one young person at a time. The students learn new language, they discover another culture, and truly become global citizens. They're also ambassadors for Rotary. And the ages that they can go out are between ages 15 and 18, and they have to be sponsored by a Rotary Club. The Rotary Clubs are in more than 100 countries. Youth Exchange, we sent out about 9,000 students worldwide. Benefits, they develop lifelong leadership skills, learn a new language and culture, build lasting friendships with young people from around the world, and really become a global citizen. The exchanges last a full academic year. So when you commit to a student as an inbound, usually they stay with 3 different host families. Sometimes they stay with one host family. Here, it is not mandatory if you send a student out here in the US that you're obligated to be a host family. And that's quite unusual because overseas in other countries, if you send a child out, you have to host a student, I should say. So, you know, cost from our standpoint to deal with it is if you're going to sponsor a student, $1,750, $750 of it goes towards their orientation meetings. It goes towards the annual trip to Disney that we sponsor, and it includes their $100 a month stipend. The outbound, the scholarship program, it's about $5,500. It includes round-trip airfare, travel insurance, travel documents such as passports and visas. Spending money in additional travel or tours are actually on the family. So that kind of sums up Youth Exchange in a nutshell, but technically it's a life-changing event, not only for the students, but also for the people around them. And that includes their families, their siblings. It includes host families. It includes Rotarians. I mean, this really opens up the world to a lot of things. So if you can be involved, I would say get involved. It's just a phenomenal program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, David. That was greatly appreciated, and that's fascinating. That's a wonderful program. I am going to turn it over now to our guest, Corey Yeung. I am going to pop up. He sent me up. Now he's upside down.
Oh, I'm gonna try.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. I'm going to pop. He sent me a PowerPoint, so he and I are going to work together on his presentation here. Let me get this up. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. Let me see that full screen here.
Yeah, just go to the first slide, and we can start there.
Okay, one moment. Let me. Whoa. There we go. Okay.
But then go to the very first slide, please.
Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right, there we go.
All right, great. Thank you. So I'm assuming I can start whenever.
Okay.
All right. So just to give a little bit of context, I mean, this presentation is going to be partially built around my Rotary Youth Exchange experience, but I thought it would be great to just frame it in a way where I could give you a little bit of timeline of who I am and what international experiences I've had. Mainly because RYE has really built all my experiences afterwards and has really shaped again who I was. I know it was mentioned before, it is a life-changing experience, so it's definitely defined uh, a part of my life and continues to have ripple effects into how I think, how I act every day. And so just a little bit of a brief timeline for myself before I actually get into the presentation, as it'll be a proper kind of foundation to set. I was born in 1995, so right now I am 24 years old, but in April I'll be 25. So how I'm framing this presentation is a quarter of a century in 15 minutes, and kind of the lessons I've learned in between that time. So if you just go back to the timeline real quick, sorry about that. Um, in 2012, that was my first international experience outside of the U.S. It was right before RYE. It was just a short study abroad program when I was in high school, and I went to Italy for 10 days. I think that was a great start to be introduced to a different culture, to a different language, and to be in a country outside of the U.S. And it was a great segue and transition for me into the RYE program, getting interested in it and having this kind of travel bug in me that I wanted some more international experiences. And RYE definitely having that experience early on kind of set that foundation. So in 2013 and 2014 was my Rotary Youth Exchange year, and I went to Japan. And then shortly thereafter, I came back to the US from 2014 to 2016, attended university. And then I went to 2016 to 2018 to Taiwan for an MBA program. So in Taiwan, it wasn't through RYE, but how I actually found out about the school that I went to in Taiwan was because of another student who did their Rotary Youth Exchange in Taiwan. So it was interesting to kind of look back and see how all those dots connected. And then from 2018 and on, I work now at Tech Data, and I've been back on the state side and just getting back into the routine of things. It's been quite hectic, great experiences, had a great time, but now it's back in the States and getting reacclimated to a more routine of things and settling things down for at least a little bit of some time. So that's a very, very brief high level timeline, but all the main kind of course of events that happened, at least for me. So Alicia, if you could move to the next slide, please. So that's why I framed the presentation as, a quarter of a century in 15 minutes, all the lessons I've learned for the first quarter of my life on this earth. And I mean, RYE is definitely a part of it. That year was fundamental in how it's developed my mindset and also how I, again, like I said before, act and have every single day. So I guess we can start off with the first lesson that I would like to introduce to you all. And right before I actually start into the lessons, just kind of, I think someone else has their audio on their end. Yep. All right, great. So the great thing about all of these different lessons is that it doesn't just feed off of my RYE experience, but it also works off of when I look back at a quarter of my life so far. It's relevant in all the experiences I've had since I was a kid all the way up until now where I'm working at Tech Data. which is why I also kind of gave you guys that timeline, because I'm going to show you several pictures. It's not going to be in that exact order, but it's going to be jumping a little bit from different stages of my life, because I felt those were kind of stories or experiences that were most relevant to the lessons that I've learned. And I'm sure this is not necessarily new material, but just a new perspective from me on how on what I've learned and what I'm continuing to learn and apply in my everyday life. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll be able to apply some of these to your own areas, or take bits and pieces and reflect and relate to it on your own. So Alicia, if you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So first one is, some of the biggest changes for me came from the smallest of opportunities in my life. So on the picture to the left is the group picture, is when I first went to Italy. It was my study abroad program, first time I went. And the picture to the right was my was during my RYE exchange program in Japan. And just a quick side note, actually the picture in Japan is one of my favorite, just because it was pretty much my first day at the school in Japan, and was one of the first pictures I took there, and it turned out to be one of the best ones and most memorable ones I've had. So I'm glad I'm able to share it with you all today. And what I mean by some of the biggest changes came from the smallest of opportunities. I mean, as a student in high school, especially a few years ago, you don't really hear much about study abroad, especially in high school. You hear a little bit more about it in college, but not so much in high school. And all that international experience, those 10 days in Italy, that first time outside of the country and from the US, was all built from a small picture advertisement that I just saw and said, yeah, I'll go and attend that meeting about going to Italy. Seems interesting, seems like a cool experience. Why not? And that small yes turned into 10 days in Italy. And those 10 days in Italy built upon my experience in being interested in going to Japan for one whole year, and meeting Suzanne and having her introduce me to the RYE program, and going through the application process, becoming an outbound, and being back here now in the US as an inbound. So this was just these experiences were just a few examples, core examples, of how a simple yes, or just a simple just a simple interest, became such a pivotal moment in my life that changed my whole trajectory of where I was going in high school and where I am now, working full time. So just also, before I go on to the next slide, if you look at the picture in Italy, I know it's a lot of people there, but there is one person with a beanie, a beanie bag right on their waist, and that's me. That was me years ago. Now looking back, it's a little bit embarrassing, but it's kind of funny to point out. I got the black beanie fanny pack per se, so fanny pack to carry all my things. But I've progressed in my, at least, fashion and sense of style since then. But a lot has changed since then, and it's been a great experience that's built on a lot of the international experiences I had later on. You can move to the next slide, please. So a great thing that I've learned from my international experiences is that experience does not translate to expertise. And I'll go into a few examples of what I mean by this, by the kind of pictures that I have. And the first one is on the left. So I feel like this is maybe the most relatable to everyone, where we've all been a kid. We've all we've all grown up and have had all these different experiences that we've built upon, and that has shaped who we are. And we've all been that little kid growing up in a big environment, in a big world. And the reason why I put this picture as part of experiences does not translate to expertise is when people become parents. Just because when you become a parent and you have a kid, you're not an expert on how kids act, why kids act the way they do, why they think the way they do. and you may not necessarily know how to teach them at every single moment. You will be learning along the way in how to parent and how to teach kids while while you have the kids. Just because you were a kid does not necessarily mean you know everything about a kid and the thought processes that they go through, and how to interact with them. And how I relate this to my international experiences is one of the fundamental examples that I have for this is learning a language. So one of the core things about the Rotary Youth Exchange Program in Japan, and also when I was in Taiwan just learning Mandarin, was we're going through this process of learning a language. But just because we're learning the language and we've become whatever level of fluency we've been aiming for during that course of time, when we look back, it does not mean we are the experts, or we know how to learn a language. We're the ones who can teach everyone how to learn a language, and we're linguists all of a sudden just because we learned a language. And what I found is that there are a lot of people who, because of their past experiences, feel like they can push their beliefs or their own experiences on others. And it's great to share your perspective. It's great to share your experience, but it's also good to recognize and be aware that it's not the be all say all. There's a lot of fluidity in terms of how people interact, their perspectives, their experiences, what they've been through in terms of how they present and share their advice to others. And a real great explanation for this as well is when I was learning Mandarin at the time, a lot of the people in the picture that you see on the right, the huge group, that was when I was in Taiwan, and it was a huge group dinner. So there's a lot of international representation there, a lot of people from Europe, but also a lot of people from Taiwan. And a lot of people from Taiwan, they're learning English. And so you would think, typically, at least for myself, when I initially went there, I thought, oh, I'm learning Chinese, so they must understand the struggles of learning a language and maybe more flexible or helpful and understanding in terms of my slow progression and being more comfortable with the language. But as it turns out, just because they're learning English and they've struggled with it, and they've been learning it since they were a little kid up until they're in college and still learning it now, they may not necessarily understand your current struggles because, one, they may be a little bit ignorant of the because they've already experienced it, they've become fluent, they've kind of forgotten that the struggles that they had, or they're just not aware that they went through that experience and realize that, oh, you're going through the same thing, so we can relate and I can help you and know how to interact and understand your point of view. So there was a lot of different ways of understanding, and there was a lot of social aspects to what I've learned through my international experiences. And one of them was basically experience does not translate to expertise. And can you move to the next slide, please? So on a more of a lighter note, taking on challenges and embracing opportunities. So I feel there are a lot of different situations where challenges and opportunities are quite synonymous. On the left is my what was one of my study abroad programs that I participated in when I was at USFSP during the summer for 20 days in Lithuania. And then on the right was also another was just another picture from my RYE exchange in Japan. And this was, and the easiest way I could explain this one is when you're learning a language and you're going through a lot of these different experiences, especially international ones, you're going to aim to either learn a language, learn a culture, understand others, understand the people and how and their values and their beliefs. But it's all a process in terms of trying to slowly understand. You can't expect to immediately be perfect in how you act and what you really succeed in. And I think what the RYE experience really taught me was it's not going to be the same as my academic experiences where I have a class and I can get an A and that's it. I move on to the next class and I just try to get an A, move on to the next thing, get an A on the assignment, get an A on the test, and then just keep moving on and not have to worry about it. Languages are very different in that it just takes time for no matter what, for an average person to become fluent in whatever level you want to become fluent in. It just takes time, and you can't expect to be perfect right out of the get-go. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna feel that feeling of failure or feeling of not being able to meet the expectations that you've had because of how it just takes time. And that's why on the very bottom I just said practice makes progress. So I'm not necessarily looking to be perfect in any way, but I am always looking to have progress in whatever I'm trying to aim for. And that's what I had to learn when I was in Japan, but also in my international experiences, just trying to understand other cultures and the values and beliefs people have it within their own cultures. Can you please move to the next slide? So through understanding others and understanding understanding their cultures, the way I've really kind of seen how you can best understand others is by having a better idea of where they may be coming from. And I put that into 3 high-level big bubbles. So when it comes to understanding someone, or maybe your lack of understanding of someone else, it's going to be one of these 3 things, or a culmination of one of the 3. So it's going to be personality, language, and culture. Language being the language barriers, and culture the cultural values. So when it comes to personality, language, and culture, these mixture of different elements is really where you're going to see how it may be easier to communicate with others. It's going to be easier to understand others, but in some cases it's going to be really difficult, and it's going to be really hard to balance that. So by going to Taiwan, which is the top picture, or going to a country outside of the US, it's going to be having at least having the awareness that, you know, it's one of these 3 elements that maybe I'm not understanding someone, or I'm having a more difficult time understanding them, or I'm having a great time understanding them. It's because of one of these things. It's because of personality. Maybe we just naturally get along and we have the same interests. Maybe it's a struggle we're having is because of language. There's a lot of language barriers. They don't really understand the jokes we're sharing, or how we communicate in English or in another language. And culture, just the different values and beliefs each culture may have. And so this relates to all 3 different pictures that I have, because the top picture was when I was in Taiwan. So almost everyone in that group was actually not from Taiwan. They're from all different countries in in Europe, a few in South America, and then also in countries outside, Asian countries outside of Taiwan. On the bottom right is when I was in Europe, in Germany, so obviously a different language and culture there. And even to the bottom left. So the bottom left is stateside. It's my own family. It was actually right before I left for my Rotary Youth Exchange program, but it's even with family. Even in the U.S. culture, where a lot of these elements can come into play. We have a lot of different personalities. There's a lot of different cultural aspects, whether you want to say it's the state culture or the mixture of the Cantonese culture, which is my family background, the Cantonese culture, or the U.S. culture, that we're always trying to work around and find the right balance in terms of understanding one another. So that's kind of how the 3 experiences I've had have built into these different experiences. And if you can move on to the next slide, please. I'm gonna try to turn on the light, just shut off all of a sudden. Give me one moment. All right, there we go. Oh. All right, so the next one is consistency is hard, restarting is harder. And this one was centered around health, and is why on the bottom I say health is number one. So if you look on the very left, you can see I was 3 years old and I could pretty much sleep anywhere, and I could still do that now. But the reason why I put that picture there is because I'm sleeping, I'm resting, I'm letting my body heal, and it's still something to this day that I'm still trying to figure out the right way to do it, to get proper rest, to let my body heal from a long stressful day now at work, or when I was on my exchange and going through all these different new school experiences or cultural experiences. Making sure you get the proper rest was essential in pretty much every stage of my life. And the middle picture was growing up when I was playing soccer in Florida. You know, I staying healthy, making sure I exercise and stay fit. And sorry, the light keeps coming, turning off. I'm not sure if I can keep it on or not, but I'll try. And then the picture on the right, the far picture on the right, with my thumbs up, you'll notice actually one hand is injured. I've got it wrapped up, and that was actually when I went to my study abroad program in Europe during my USFSP years, and it was because I was quite clumsy and quite reckless. To keep the clumsy story short, the actual reason why I hurt myself on my exchange was because I tried to climb a tree in a park. That's a bit of my personality a few years ago. It's still a bit of my personality now. I'm just naturally clumsy, and I like to be a little bit adventurous. And if I see something cool to climb, I'm gonna try and climb it and see how high I can go. And some of the consequences are really cool pictures, but other ones I just end up hurting myself and looking a bit of a fool. But no matter what, it didn't affect me during my travels, and I still had a good time. And how this kind of circles back to consistency is hard and restarting is harder is that for health, I've always found that being consistent in exercising, being consistent in how I eat and how I take care of myself is a lot easier than completely stop exercising, completely ignoring what I consume and put in my body, and completely restarting. So consistency is the best and best way to go about it from a perspective of health. Can you move on to the next slide, please? And I believe I'm going a little bit over, so I apologize. I'll try to get through the rest of the slides a little bit more quickly. So choosing who to be and how to act. So on the left was at USFSP. I was introducing a lot of my friends, college friends, to dim sum, which is a type of Asian cuisine. And then on the picture to the right was when I went to London. I was in the Ferris wheel, and as you can see, the man in the black jacket is kind of giving me an odd look. I think it's because of the British hat I have, but the reason why I put that on is, yeah, I might look like a typical U.S. tourist who may not be fitting in, but also it's just to kind of reflect, you know, I take things in a very light manner, looking at things in an approach where you can bring humor and bring a little bit of levity to whatever stressful situation you may be going in is the best way to do it. And I've heard it several times before, and I thought it'd be great to reiterate it at this meeting, is that at any moment in time, you can always choose how you want to be and how you want to act. So you might as well enjoy yourself and have a good time. If you can move on to the next slide, please. And this is the second to last one, so it's gratitude. So obviously, these are pictures of my dog. When we first got my dog in 2004, up until 2014, just to kind of take a similar picture for that. And on the right, he's just holding one of his favorite toys. The reason why I put gratitude on this is because right before I left to Taiwan, he was getting a little bit older. He was about 11 or 12 years old. And in the back of my mind, I just kind of knew that, oh, this might be the last time I see him. So I still remember vividly in my mind when I was at the airport, I at least took him on my own away from the rest of the family just to have a moment with him, because he was a really close brother of mine. I know people have different definitions for it, but at least for my dog, he was a great brother to me. And during my exchange, he had he passed away, and it made me at least appreciate that the last time I saw him at the airport, I at least made the most of it and took in that moment with him, and made sure that I could share that experience with him. And it's just, and this is something that I'm continuing to try and practice every day as well. It's just consistently showing my appreciation and having gratitude, because I am very lucky in this life and from what I've had so far, and I should be showing more appreciation, and it's what I'm always working towards every day. And if you go to the last slide, so what a lot of people ask, especially in college, which is why I put my graduation picture there, is what's my purpose in life? What should I do? How should what should my outlook be? And this is something that I'm still continuing to define for myself, that I'm still trying to search for myself. But there are a few points that I feel that are a commonality with everyone. So if you could just click one button more. Yep. So it's kind of three pillars, or three areas that I would really say everyone's kind of looking for. The first one is what value you're providing. How are you contributing, and how are you giving? This Rotary Youth Exchange Program, or this Rotary organization in general, is a great example of this. We're contributing back to the community, to the world. You all, because of you all, you have given me an experience that has been life-changing and has defined has at least partly defined how I act and how I am today. And you guys are giving a great contribution to this world just by being a part of the Rotary organization. Second one is, what progress do you feel like you're making in whatever area of your life? It's not necessarily where you're at, but more so how you feel the progress you're making in that area in your life. And I feel that if you do feel like you're making progress, you are having a sense of fulfillment, and that sense of fulfillment would lead to the purpose that you feel like you have in this life. And the third one is the variety you have in your life. So while people are defining their purpose or what they're trying to do in their life on this earth, is what different kinds of experiences I can have. What can I do outside of just my comfort zone? And again, it just circles back right to the international experiences from Rotary Youth Exchange, and how those international experiences really defined a lot of students, including myself, in how I am today. Now, do I have an exact answer? No, I just gave you more questions, but I think those questions at least are a little bit more, are still high level, but a little bit can give a little bit more direction in terms of how you want to define what you want to do, and how you want to find fulfillment for yourself in your life, and how you want to give back to your community and to the world. So if you go to the next slide. This is what I'm just going to leave for Q&A, but the last picture is just a picture of the closest group of friends I've ever made so far, at least up until this point in my life. And it's truly an international family. There's 2 of us in there, including myself, that are from the US, but all the rest are from different countries in Europe and Asia. And I thought it would just be a great last picture to share, because it's kind of like that TV show Friends. I feel like that's how close we are as a group in that picture. So thank you for giving me this opportunity and time to talk about my experiences, at least a little bit of on a high level, and the lessons I've learned in the first quarter of my life. And thank you for letting me go over the time and to explain a little bit about all these lessons I've learned, at least these main core ones.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Corey, for sharing all of that. Um, I'm going to open the floor to questions for Corey. If you have a question, if you could introduce yourselves and actually where you're, well, calling in from.
Okay, Corey, hi. I'm David. I'm living here near Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Are you open for answering some specific questions about Taipei?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
We have a meeting coming up June of next year. There'll be 20, 30, 40,000 of our other closest friends are going to be joining us in there.
Hmm.
Is learning Mandarin required to get around in Taipei?
I apologize for the light again. I don't think I can really adjust it too well. But to answer your question, in Taipei, I think at least in Taiwan in general, I think at least the locals there, even though they may not be able to speak English as well, a lot of the young folks, they can help. They've been able to learn English quite well, at least in terms of compared to other Asian countries. So if you're ever looking for help, I would definitely recommend going to the young people first and trying to ask for them in terms of just getting yourself around the city, especially in Taipei, getting around the city or just trying to order food. I don't think you necessarily need to learn Mandarin, but it's always helpful when you travel to another country just to learn the basic hello, thank yous. But you don't necessarily need to try and force yourself to speak it when you're over there. But it could help to learn just a few words and key phrases here and there just to help get around. But for the most part, they can help translate, or the young people can help answer any questions you may have to get around the city.
Do you recollect anything about Taipei, specifically the convention center and the hotel area, sketchy areas, nice areas, anything you want to advise us where we should be staying?
Well, Taiwan is actually a pretty great country in terms of just having a very low criminal rate. So there's not really areas you need to avoid in Taiwan, specifically Taipei. It is a big city, but you Taiwan is literally one of the countries where you could leave your wallet or phone on the table and go like 20 minutes somewhere else, and it'll still be there when you get back. That's one of the funny things about at least Taiwan. So I mean, in terms of having areas to avoid, you don't necessarily have to do that. Um, and then in at least for hotels, I mean, the city is big, but the train system is perfect where it's very efficient. You can get around very easily. So I would just recommend, if you pick a place either close to the convention or away from the convention center, just make sure you're close to a train station, which it should be relatively easy because it's so well established there. But just make sure you're close. I would say 5-10 minutes away from a train station, which shouldn't be too difficult, but it'll definitely be the easiest way to get around.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Corey. What kind of, you mentioned culture and personality, language. How did Rotary, or what did Rotary do to prepare you to meet these challenges?
Yeah. Hopefully this is a little bit easier. I don't know if you can hear me as a little bit better. So Rotary actually did a lot to prepare me. So at least in Florida, I think Florida has one of the most established programs for Rotary Youth Exchange in terms of training the students and getting them prepared for their exchange. I just came back from a Lake Yale orientation where it was a whole weekend long training for the students, and that was in Florida. That was in January, and they're doing another one in June for them. But even outside of those two orientations, there's constant training materials and assignments for the students to work on for the 6 months in preparation for them to go on their exchange. So there's a lot of material, there's a lot of content that the RYE program in Florida has really established quite well to prepare students from a cultural basis to acclimate well to the country they're going to, as well as setting the foundation to try and learn the language a little bit before they go.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is I was involved in RYE and my Rotary Club in New York for a number of years. And while generally we had good experiences, we also had several bad experiences. People who maybe, I recall that we had one boy from Belgium who actually stayed with us for 1/3 of the year.
Hmm.
And I think everybody in our Rotary Club had the impression that he wasn't really, we weren't quite sure if he understood why he was there
Hmm.
uh, or what he was going to get out of it. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, he did his year and then he went back,
Yeah.
but we just didn't feel it was very successful.
Absolutely. I definitely can understand that. And well, one, I can't really speak to the other countries and how they prepare their students, but what I can understand the fact that for some students, it's just not going to be the experiences that others may share or that we may project. But I would definitely say that for the program overall, in terms of what it provides to majority of the students and people who participate in it, it is the life-changing one where it really sets the foundation for them in the future and really sets them apart from other individuals. Now, there are going to be a few chinks in the armor. There's going to be a few students who may return to their home country or may not turn out to be the best experience for them. And same for the Rotary program in that country. But those specific students, those specific stories shouldn't downplay the amount of impact overall that this RYE program really does have in every single country it touches. It's truly a wonderful program that really has developed me, but several others. And I sorry about that. I do think it does kind of supersede even the few bad experiences or experiences that may not have been the best here and there. Overall, I think it's just a great.
Did you stay with one family or 3 different families in Taiwan?
So in Japan, it was quite unique. I know in Florida, they emphasize 3 to 5 host families, but I had 5 when I was in Japan.
Huh?
Yeah, so I was literally living out of my suitcase for that year.
Hey, Corey, this is past District Governor Will Miller.
Yep.
I have a question. In either your conversations with people or your observations while you were in Taiwan, did you encounter any concerns that people had about the relationship with China, increasing military presence with China?
Mm-hmm. The surprising thing was, at least in terms of their relationship with China, on a everyday, on a just a daily basis, on an everyday kind of interaction, it doesn't come up. It's not a huge concern, but there are precautions set in place, and it does come up every now and then in conversation in terms of their relationship with China. For example, when I went to Japan, there was some conflict in terms of who owned specific islands that had a lot of oil and would obviously their petroleum industry. And then also when I was in Taiwan, obviously Taiwan declaring independence. Excuse me for a moment, just loud radio passing by. Or in Taiwan, when because they declare independence, but China still says that they're part of the People's Republic of China. Those are definitely one of the more touchy subjects that Taiwanese people may be a little bit more disconcerted to speak about or be so open about. But the political landscape is still very much prevalent, but it's not impacting your everyday life or your everyday conversation that you have with the people. But it is obviously a big topic of conversation, but it's not something that would impact me going on an exchange or me making friends there, or even people from mainland China. A lot of them exchange in Japan or go to Taiwan, and they don't have an issue. They just get along, but we understand that they have different perspectives. There's different opinions on both sides, but I think it's also playing into a little bit the Asian culture where it's not as confrontational. So you're not going to see any physicality or violence come of it. I mean, I know the Hong Kong protests may say something else, but generally it's not going to be that extreme. I mean, especially for just people going there for an exchange and trying to have a good international experience.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay, I've got one other quick one. Corey, where is the tech data firm that you work with?
So Tech Data is in Clearwater, and the reason why I'm in the middle of community is because I'm in St. Petersburg right now. But there's just there's no quiet place with good lighting and all that I could find in between. So the best I could do is here I am right now. But yeah, no, it's located in Clearwater. That's where the main office is.
Okay.
You're close enough to us. Next time we have you on as a speaker, we'll just invite you over.
Oh yeah, sure. That'll be great. That'll probably be easier and a little bit easier for everyone else.
We're right beside Clearwater, Bel Air Bluffs.
Oh, great to hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Our member in Africa.
Cameroon, Alphonse. Did you, Alphonse, in Cameroon, did you have any questions?
Just wish to know the procedure of becoming a youth exchange student.
Mm-hmm. To become a youth, sorry, I think I missed the first part of the question.
Just the procedure, what does it require? Or how did you get into it?
So the very first thing that everyone, at least as a student in the District 6950, which is the area that I'm in, is to attend a recruitment event. So Suzanne is the one who leads those, and she's been going to all of them. To go to one of those recruitment events, after you go to the recruitment events, there's an interview process where you interview with ROTEX, which is ROTEX are students who came back from their Rotary Youth Exchange experience. So you get to interview with them. You also interview with the Rotarians, and after those interviews are set in place, then they would go through the decision process of whether they should accept the student or not. And it's a certain age range in high school, I believe sophomore to senior. So I went right after I graduated from high school, which was the kind of last time or last opportunity you would have to participate in the Rotary Youth Exchange program. But yeah, I mean, just being make sure you're within that age range, and then also that you can attend those events and go through the interview process and submit an application just on a high level to describe who you are and what you do in your current high school experiences.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, that's wonderful. Glad to see everybody. We're approaching 8 o'clock. So Corey, thank you again. That was awesome. Good to see you. I said next time we'll invite you over.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds good.
So close. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close out the meeting for this evening. Nothing else?
Hey, again, Alphonse, it's good to see you, or good to hear you in Cameroon.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's what time it is?
What is your time in
Alphonse?
Cameroon, Alphonse?
We are 3 minutes to 2 a.m.
Wow.
That's dedication.
Yeah, you have an internet audience.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for having me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the time to at least share my experiences.
Great, great,
Good
great.
job.
Thank you,
Thank
Corey.
you.
Then go ahead and close out the meeting with,
Four-way
what,
test.
the four-way test.
Is it the truth?
Is it truth?
Is it fair to officers?
Will build goodwill and better friendships.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Love it. Thank you,
Excellent.
guys.
Thank
It'll
you.
be fun.
Good, good to hear you, David. Take care.
You too.
Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.